Hey there guys, it's me, Tsumugi. Welcome back to my Warhammer 40k video, and today we're going to talk about my first impression on Psychic Awakening Blood of Bow. Now I know a while ago, it was like, I wrote a post on YouTube, not YouTube, I'm sorry, I wrote a post on Facebook saying that it's going to be like a relatively cold winter for Tyranid this year. And that was because I was just reading through like the point changes, and I feel like it's really a bit underwhelming, and which it is, you know, it's really underwhelming to see there's only that few units that got point changes, and majority of our unit like Gene Stealers, Hormigons, and like Hive Tyrants, Carnifexes didn't get changed at all. It was just a little bit underwhelming, but it was, you know, there were some units that actually got changed, which is a step in the right direction. For example, Warriors getting now a 2-point reduction, so it's no longer a 20 point, it's like 18 point per model, as well as like Hive Guards, which is surprising because Hive Guard is already pretty overpowered. Well, not exactly overpowered, but it's like a pretty decent take on shooting Tyranid army, and they now got like another 5-point reduction in their Impaler cannon, as well as more surprisingly, Kraken actually got the point reduction down to 155. It was 170. I mean, back in the beginning of this year, it was actually 210 or something like that. And then with the last chapter approved, it got decreased down to like 170 points, which is already pretty good. And now, for some reason, Games Workshop decided to make it down to 155 points, which is, you know, more power to us, right? But I need to talk about this before more Tyranid players, especially newcomers, get misleading into building like a shooty-based Tyranid army, because this is basically what the meta tells you to, you know, like, oh, Hive Guard got point reduction, Exocrine got point reduction, maybe we should just make like a Chronos list and sit back and shoot, right? I think that's like the general idea that people are trying to do right now, to craft their list based around all these point changes, which is great. You know, you're playing alongside with the new meta changes, you're playing alongside with the new point reductions, you're trying to get as much advantage as you possibly can, which is a good thing to do. But I feel like that itself can be quite misleading, because I feel like Tyranids should not be playing defensively and playing shooty. You should play very aggressive as you possibly can. Sitting back and shoot, it's just not an option. It's not a good option for you, because Tyranids have so many tools in this new Psychic Awakening that you can actually utilize to make sure you become like one of the strongest pushing army in the 40k meta, even considering the Space Marine. Okay, even when considering Space Marine, we're still gonna be like the best pushing army that captures the objective on the table and just completely dominate the board. Okay, so once again, just a short reminder that this is not going to be my walkthrough video, which I talk about every single stratagem, every single adaptive physiology, like the new psychic powers and like the new stratagems. You know, I'm not going to do any of that, not in this video. I will be doing that in my next video, I believe, but that video is probably not going to come out until like 2020 January or something like that. But anyways, that's besides the point. Let's jump right into it. So, okay, so what do I feel about Tyranids? Before we talk about Tyranids, I want to talk a little bit more about like the current meta right now. The current meta has been dominated by Space Marine for a very while now. Okay, so it used to be dominated by Ultramarine when it first came out, then followed by Iron Hand, and now recently into Imperial Fist and Crimson Fist are still dominating the meta right now with their overwhelming numbers of Bolter, with their Bolter discipline and intercessor spam with like combat doctrine. So they have like devastator doctrine, and then like tactical doctrine, and so on. Basically give them like free AP every turn, essentially speaking. So Space Marine, how do they operate? So right now, like I said, they operate around this whole new doctrine shit. Right now, the reason why Tyranid has been falling behind a little bit, both in competitive and in casual play, is because like the Bolter spam is just completely massacring our troop choices. You know, our majority of our troop choices are basically Hormigons, Gene Stealers, Ripper Swarms, and sometimes Termagants, right? Like that's our most basic troop choices. And those troop choices have a very common weakness. It's that they are very susceptible to like high volume, weak fire, such as Bolter. You know, Bolter is just completely kill us. The reason why a Swarm army has been, in theory, dominating like the meta is because like everyone's focusing so much on anti-tank firepower, because Imperial Knight was dominating, so everyone was like preparing all the anti-tank firepower as much as they can, and they're completely ignoring the anti-infantry department. That's why Tyranid actually get to sneak in a little bit of like their swarm armies and just eat up those anti-tank firepower armies, you know, because they have nothing left to fight against our swarms. But right now, the meta has been changed. The meta has been shifted towards anti-infantry and capturing objectives, which Space Marine are very good at. Okay, Space Marine with their intercessors, they're very durable. They're 2 wound per model. It's a 2 wound per model, toughness 4, and if they sit in cover, holy shit, you're not gonna remove that model anytime soon. If they move into a cover, they become 2+ armor save, and they can dish out a shit tons of firepower by doing absolutely nothing. And they can just park in like a room or like behind a cover, and there is no way you can remove them effectively. There's just like no way. There's no fucking way, right? And if you want to charge them, if you dare charge them with your Hormone guns with Gene Stealers, they also got Shock Assault, which is basically +1 attack whenever they charge or get charged or heroic intervene and so on. So it's a very hard situation for Tyranid to deal with, because you can't just like tar pit them and try to swarm them down in melee combat, because the fact is they can actually dish out quite a bit of melee offensive counter attacks. You know, so you can't just like trap them together like what you used to. It's like, oh, all I need to do is lock them down in endless melee combat and then we win. You know, I mean, that used to be our strategy, but right now it doesn't work on Space Marine anymore, because they can actually do quite a bit of damage in melee combat. So how do we solve this problem? How do we actually solve this problem? Well, I mean, by reverting back to more shooty and defensive playstyle. Okay, which I'm gonna talk about later. It's not a very effective way to do with it, but like that's the meta shift, right? So majority of Tyranid player, when they see Space Marine with their 2 wound per model and 3+ armor save, the lack of guardsmen and the lack of Imperial Knights actually make Hive Guard and Exocrane get to shine a little bit, because Exocrane and Hive Guard, they are designed to kill Space Marines. I mean, just take a look at their weapon. Look at the bioplasmic weapon on Exocrane and the Imperial Cannon on Hive Guard. Hive Guard's Imperial Cannon is strength 8 AP2, D3 damage, ignores cover, and does not require line of sight, and it's 36 inches. So it's like a perfect weapon to fight against Space Marine intercessors, because you can effectively, on average, kill intercessor per shot, right? Because it's a D3 damage, but like, you know, the average of D3 is 2, so you can pretty much like one-shot a fucking intercessor if you land the shot. And since intercessor, regardless whether they're in cover or not, because Imperial Cannon will ignore cover, they will only get 5+ armor save. Regardless whether they're in cover or not. 5+ armor save, which is not exactly easy to make, and that is the general consensus when Tyranid trying to fight against Space Marine meta. You kind of just have to bring a lot of Hive Guards, which with the latest chapter improved 19 point reduction, it seems to be like the best way to deal with Marines, because now not only we have Hive Guard to deal with the new Space Marine meta, we also got point reduction of Hive Guard. So naturally speaking, it is perfectly normal to bring even more Hive Guard. I think it will now be pretty decent if you bring two squads of Hive Guards. Okay, even though you can still only apply a single-minded annihilation to a single squad per turn, but it is still good to have 2 of them, because there's just so many Marines on the field. You need to find a way to kill them. And not only that, Invictus Warsuit, I would say War Machine, Invictus Warsuit, as well as other new Space Marine vehicles, as well as like Dreadnought Spam, they are also a pretty decent target for Hive Guards and Imperial Cannon as well. So if you just spam Imperial Cannon, in theory, you should have enough firepower to kill the Space Marine, right? I mean, yeah, on paper, it seems to be that way. Exocrane also is a pretty decent choice here. It's a strength 7, AP3, and 2 flat-out damage, and it has 12 shot per turn, assuming you don't move. And it's a hit on Blizzard skill of a 3+, which is very decent for Tyranid. And now with the new Psychic Awakening Blood of Bow, you actually get to move your Exocrane, even advance actually. You can actually move and advance your Exocrane and just pop 1 CP, 1 command point, and use a stratagem to treat it as if it didn't move at all. And then you can still shoot at the full distance as well as like the full amount of shot, right? So that's pretty decent. They also got point reduction down to 155 per model, which is insane. I honestly feel like Games Workshop is pushing a little bit here. I feel like 155 is a bit too overpowered. I mean, yes, coming from a Tyranid player, that's kind of a little bit disingenuous, but like it really is. It's a little bit overpowered in my opinion. I feel like 160 or 170 should be fine as it is, but 155, you know what? I'll take it. I'll take it any day. You know, that's pretty good. Does that mean we need to start spamming Exocrane? Yes and no. Yes, because it's now a very effective firepower unit that you should take. No, because I don't want people to trap themselves inside this bubble of we should just sit back and shoot and just trying to outshoot your opponent. That shouldn't be the way we play. I mean, at least if you want to win, you know, because if you take a look at the new chapter approved 2019 rule, those rules reward you, at least for Internal War. I haven't checked out the Maelstrom yet. The new Maelstrom is pretty hot, but like, you know, I'll probably need to spend more time reading on that. But like the new Eternal War mission, they encourage you to actually move to your opponent's deployment zone and take their point. I mean, take Scorched Earth for example. You can actually raise enemies' control point. So you can actually remove their control point in their deployment zone from the game entirely, and they can no longer score point from then on. If you're gonna spend most of your time sitting back and shoot with your Assassinating and Hive guards, how are you going to able to like take those points? You're just not going to be able to. You're not going to have enough unit and the models on the field to able to actually achieve that, because you'll just be sitting in your base and hopefully you can outshoot your opponent. But even if you do, Space Marine overall has a better mobility because they can move and shoot just as effective as you. They will be capturing the midfield objective while moving towards you, and you'll be feeling pressure to actually shoot them one by one while they have been constantly capturing more points than you. And then eventually, yes, you will fall into the trap that most Tau player falls into, which is like you manage to outshoot your opponent, but you still lose the war. You win the battle, but you lost the war. And this is because that you focus too much on eliminating the enemy, which is not the point of the new chapter-approved 2019 Eternal War missions. The new missions actually reward you for mobility, for maneuvering around the battlefield. You know, go out of your way, you know, get out of your comfort zone and actually capture enemy's base. That's what the new chapter-approved rule actually encourages you to do. And if you choose to rely on shooting unit and sit in your base, you're never gonna get that win. Yeah, sure, you can feel good for out shooting your opponent, but you're not gonna get that point. You're not gonna get that victory point. We really shouldn't just sit in the back and shoot, even though that seems to be the case, even though that seems to be what Games Workshop is encouraging us to do. So now here's the question. You ask me, Tsunugi, so you're saying that we shouldn't sit back and shoot, even with all the point reduction that encourages us to do so. So what do you propose? All right. So here's what I propose. Okay. After reading the Blow the Battle, Second Awakening, I noticed there's some ability that it's just so hard to ignore, and I don't see anyone's talking about it. I mean, I've seen people talk about how they can stack like AP4 on their sizing talent for the Hormigons. I mean, that's pretty cute and all, but like, I think that kind of just falls back to what I talked about in my previous video, where I say, you know, people just like trying to put square in the square hole and put like a circle in the circle hole. It's just like, it's a kid toy stuff, you know, like that's the analogy I made before. I mean, people have been trying to like come up with like the most killer combo with the new stratagems and like the new adaptive physiology, but I think more importantly, there's something that's just so hard to ignore, and I want to talk about it like right now, okay? Why don't we start by talking about the new adaptive physiology, because I feel like that's the most important stuff with the Blow the Battle Psychic Awakening book, okay? This is the most important part of it. Let me just do like a little walkthrough. Basically, what it does is like, instead of taking a warlord trait, you can actually forfeit a warlord trait in order to give a single unit, infantry unit, or a monster model to have a special ability. And also you can spend extra 1 command point to give another unit that has not yet getting this adaptive physiology, be it an infantry unit or a monster model, to have another adaptive physiology. And remind you that you can actually have 2 of the same adaptive physiology on 2 different units, but you cannot have 2 adaptive physiology on same unit or same model. Okay, so now that since we get out of the way, let's talk about the enhanced resistance. I know enhanced resistance has been talked about quite a bit. People are talking about like the ability to ignore AP1 and AP2 is very powerful, but I think people wanted to put it on top of like fucking Hormigons and Termagon. It just makes me cringe. It's like, why the fuck would you even do that? Why the fuck would you even consider doing that? Fucking Hormigon and Termagon has like 6+ armor save in the first place anyway. Like, people are just gonna shoot at it with like AP0 weapon anyway. So it's like, it doesn't really matter, you know? You should give this to something that has like the pretty decent armor, such as Hive Guard and Warriors, you know? I think like the most important part about this is like, now Warriors are pretty viable, because the problem with Warriors, okay, the problem with Warriors, like, there's just too much plasmic weapon and autocannon weapon that's, you know, like, just all over the fucking place, because like the meta used to be anti Imperial Knights as well as anti-light vehicle, so there's just like too many plasmic weapon and there's just too many autocannon weapon that Warriors simply cannot survive. But with the enhanced resistance, things are about to change, you know? Like, Warrior has like 4+ armor save by default, and if you give it enhanced resistance, basically anything you're trying to shoot at it, if you're trying to shoot a Warrior with like a battle cannon, which is, you know, Imperial Guard with the Lehman Russ battle tank, it's gonna take that battle cannon, you can basically make their weapon into AP0 when they're shooting at your Warrior. Okay, you can take this on your Warrior or your Hive Guard, depending on the situation. But generally speaking, you want to take the dynamic camouflage for your Hive Guards, because Hive Guards are usually going to sit in the back, especially behind cover. So like they're going to get more mileage out of dynamic camouflage instead of enhanced resistance. But overall, I feel like enhanced resistance really makes Warrior viable, because Warriors are the type of unit that you want to keep in the midfield, like somewhere that both you and your opponent can see, because you want your Warrior to actually do something. Okay, the biggest problem for Tyranid, which kind of like piggyback to what I said about very beginning, it's like Space Marine has been dominating mana because they are capable of killing all our swarms, and we have been capturing objective with our lesser creatures such as Termagants and Hormagaunts, right? Now Space Marine has like shit tons of bolter fire that can easily wipe out all our Termagants and Hormagaunts. So what do we do about it? I think we should present like a new troop choices that can equally stand up toe-to-toe against like intercessors, as well as outshooting them. And I think like Warrior is the perfect answer. Warriors now also got a point reduction. Now it's 18 points per model. Okay, you want to take a group of 9 Warriors, and then you take 3 Venom Cannons, because you can. You know, for every 3 Warriors, one of them can actually hold a Venom Cannon instead of like a regular weapon, which is Death Spitter, which should be your default choice. 6 Death Spitters, and equip them with Siphon Talons. Okay, don't equip them with like Bone Sword and anything like that, because it's just not worth it. Their objective is to move around in the middle field and not get into melee assault, and they actually want to just like move around and shoot. So like that's how I position my Warriors. So they should have enhanced resistance. They are going to be immune to majority of like small arms fire. Warriors are going to be the counterpart of Space Marines intercessors. We are going to have our own intercessors sitting in the middle field. Okay, well, not exactly sitting and not doing anything. You can move around if you want to, but your main objective is to stay there and control the midfield. And there's nothing your opponent can do to remove them from the table. There's nothing they can do, because they're just so tough. They are relatively cheap, so even if they manage to destroy that group of Warrior, it's okay. You still have another group of it. You know, you can have like 2 groups of Warrior. I think the golden number here, well, I'm not gonna say golden number. I think like I will prefer to have like 2 groups of like 9 Warriors. So basically the total of 18 Warriors, and then you slap like a Tyranid Prime in the middle in the middle of them, and then you take something like a Venom Thrope or like Maleceptor, which by the way also got point reduction. So you basically, what you're gonna have is you're gonna have a toughness for 3 wound per model. If you take Euromagon, that's gonna be 3+ armor save, regardless whether you're in cover or not, and you're gonna have immunity towards AP1 and AP2 weapon, and you're also gonna have -1 to hit. Okay, and if your enemy does decide to shoot at you with overcharged plasma weapon, you can even pop a new stratagem that's designed for Warrior exclusively, Unyielding Chitin. That basically reduces the damage you take from that Warrior unit down by 1 to a minimum of 1. So if they shoot at you with their overcharged plasma gun, generally speaking, strength 8 AP4 and 2 damage, right? It's now going to be strength 8 AP4 and 1 damage. So it's like, okay, what do you fucking do, right? I have like 3 wounds per model, I don't really care. And you are risking for overcharging, because I have like Maleceptor and Venom Thrope sitting behind you, you know, so that's -1 to hit, you know. So like Warriors are going to be a very key part of holding the midfield objective. The midfield objective is not going to be held by Termagon anymore. Like we used to be using a lot of Termagons or some Ripper Swarm to hold the midfield objective, but we no longer have to do that, because the midfield objective has been pretty hard to hold. It has been pretty hard to hold because Marine has been spraying all their fucking bolter fire, and like our Termagons simply cannot take it. You know, we cannot survive with our Termagons or Ripper Swarm. They're just gonna get completely wiped out in like a single turn. But with the new adaptive physiology, as well as like the new Unyielding Chitin, Warrior's gonna be very tough. They're gonna be your core backbone unit, sitting in the midfield and controlling the midfield and control the pace of battle. Okay, so Warrior is back. I think Warrior is definitely back for this. This is the first thing I want to talk about. And the second thing I want to talk about is the Maleceptor. They got this new stratagem. It's a 2 CP stratagem. Use this stratagem at the start of the turn. Okay, so you can use this right off the bat at the start of the turn. Okay, select one maleceptor model from your army. Until the end of that turn, when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon against a friendly unit within 6 inches of that model, subtract 1 from that weapon's strength characteristic to a minimum of 1 for that attack. So what does this mean? It means we now have a universal -1 to strength on multiple range weapon. So say if you put like a maleceptor in the middle of 30 Hormagaunts and 20 Gene Stealers, when your opponent is trying to shoot at your Gene Stealers or your Hormagaunts, let's say your opponent is trying to shoot at you with your bowgun, right? When they're trying to shoot at it, and then if you have this stratagem on, what's going to happen is their strength is going to be reduced from strength 4 to strength 3. So instead of wounding your Hormagaunts on the 3+, they're now going to wound your Hormagaunts on the 4+. And instead of wounding on your Gene Stealer on the 4+, they're now going to wound your Gene Stealer on the 5+. So this is huge. This is very important. This is a very important arsenal for Earth Tyranids to like really battle this Space Marine bolter spam meta. You know, like there's just so much bolter spam on the field right now. You need this. You need this maleceptor to -1 strength off those bolter fire to make them not as effective against our swarm. Okay, so and also it's I mean maleceptor, it's a very interesting unit. Like I've been talking about maleceptor for a very long time. I think I said that multiple times in my previous video. I talk about like how maleceptor I really want to use it, but I just don't find a reason to. I think I finally found the one reason why should everyone bring at least one maleceptor. I think technically you should bring 2, because if you only bring 1, people can just focus fire down, and then you will lose the ability to use this stratagem at all. But if you bring 2, there is no way they can remove 2 maleceptor in the single turn deck. There's no fucking way. I mean, the maleceptor, look at his fucking stat line, man. Like toughness 7, 3+ armor save, 4+ invulnerable save, and it has like what, 12 wounds, I believe? I think it has like 12 wounds. Yeah, it's basically like a Hive Tyrant stat line, except that it cannot fly or move as quickly. But like defensive wise, it has exactly the same stat line. And it does not need to actually do anything significant. It just needs to be there, okay? You can actually use Metabolic Overdrive, allows you to move a unit even after you move it already. So it's like you get to move it twice. The biggest restriction on Metabolic Overdrive is that you cannot shoot or charge. Basically, prevent you from performing any sort of activities, but not for maleceptors, because maleceptor does not have a shooting weapon and it does not want to get into melee combat anyway. Like maleceptor's power lies within its psychic ability, so you can actually move your maleceptor twice. If you put your maleceptor in Kraken detachment, which allows it to advance 3d6 and pick the highest result, it can easily keep up with your swarm. It can easily keep up with Gene Stealers and Hormagaunts because it's able to move twice per turn. Basically, essentially, right? So now you have a maleceptor that's in the front line alongside with your Gene Stealers and Hormagaunts, and just tell your opponent, okay, you know what? You want to shoot at my Gene Stealers, you want to shoot at my Hormagaunts? Well, your bolter just basically become a last gun. It's strength 3 now, man. It's strength 3 now. You want to shoot anything that's within 6 inches of my maleceptor? They all got strength reduced, okay? And bear in mind that it says any friendly unit within 6 inches, not any friendly model. So that basically means that you actually don't need to have your entire Hormagaun swarm or your Gene Stealer swarm to be wholly within 6 inches of your maleceptor. As long as one model of that unit is touching within that 6-inch aura bubble, they will all benefit from this. Now, there are many ways to perform this strategy. So say you can actually form like a very long rank of your Hormagaunts, and as long as one model of that Hormagaun squad is touching within the 6-inch bubble, the whole rank will get it. The whole rank will get this benefit. All you have to do is put your maleceptor somewhere in the midfield. Everything that's touching within that 6-inch aura will benefit from this. This is a huge force multiplier. This is very important in my opinion, that I think from now on, for any Tyranid race that fighting against like a shooting based army, you need to have at least one maleceptor. You need to have at least a single maleceptor to have the option to activate this on demand. Okay, I think like you should take 2, but I think 1 should suffice. All right, that's what I say. That's what I say about maleceptor. You really need this shit, especially fighting versus Marines, and not only for bolter fire. Like if you take, for example, right, let's say you're fighting against Imperial Guard, and they like to spam all their fucking Lehman Russ battle tank, and they also have like a shit tons of battle cannon, as well as a lot of auto cannon, right? Auto cannon, battle cannon, whatever. What happens is, let's say you take like a swarm of Carnifex, okay? Let's say you want to play as a Carnifex army, and you have like 5 Carnifex with 019. leading them. All right. Now, if you shoot at them with battle cannon, you will wound them on the 3+, right? But if you put a maleceptor in the middle of the Carnifex, as long as they're touching within the 6-inch bubble, what happens is when they're trying to shoot at them with battle cannon, they will now wound them on the 4+ instead, not a 3+. This is very important because now your Carnifex are essentially effectively toughness 8. You know, when fighting against, when getting shot by a battle cannon, they are effectively toughness 8. And with their -1 to hit with their Sportsys upgrade, it's just going to be so hard to remove. It is going to be so hard for Imperial Guard to remove your Carnifex, and there's nothing they can do about it. They still have to shoot at it, of course, but there's nothing they can do about it because now you have this stratagem that reduces the incoming strength of all ranged weapon within 6 inches of the Maleceptor. And even if you want to pick up the Maleceptor, like I said, it has the pretty decent defensive stat line. It's really hard to remove it in a single turn. It's actually pretty hard. And in addition, Maleceptor also provide the much needed synapse for the Carnifex. Because as we know that when we're trying to build like a Carnifex army, the first problem we're gonna encounter is that, okay, so who's gonna provide the synapse, right? Who the fuck is gonna provide synapse? We can probably take like a Hive Tyrant with wings and trying to provide synapse, but Hive Tyrant with wings can easily get shot down because it has more than 9 wounds and it's not, you know, you can just shoot it down, focus fire, you know, it can die very fast. Should I bring Brute Lord instead? Yes, Brute Lord is less than 10 wounds. It cannot be targeted unless you're a sniper rifle. But why bring a Brute Lord just to babysit a bunch of Carnifex? It doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? However, if you bring a Maleceptor, it will make all sorts of sense because not only you provide the much needed synapse, you also provide the deny for the psychic power. You can actually deny 2 psychic power per turn with Maleceptor. You provide synapse, you deny 2 psychic power per turn, and you also have an on-demand stratagem that reduces the incoming strength by 1. Which basically, essentially, like I said, once again, if they're trying to shoot at you with battle cannon, it used to be wounding on 3+, now it will wound on a 4+, which is 16% differences. And that is going to make all the difference for your Carnifex to survive until they reach the front line. That's just how powerful Maleceptor is. And once again, just want in case if I haven't made myself very clear, obviously you want to take Maleceptor as Kraken, okay? Because you want to be able to move them towards the front line to cover your Gene Stealers, Hormigons, and Carnifex, or whatever you're trying to push towards enemy's deployment zone, okay? Play aggressively. Play as aggressive as possible and just snatch that objective away from the deployment zone. All right, just do that. Okay, so that's how I feel about the Maleceptor for now. This is all I want to talk about today. I know this is kind of like a messy format to talk about, but I just need to get this out of my chest. You know, like I've been reading all the comments and reading all the QQing on the Tyranid group pages. I mean, I understand, you know, I understand like the new blow about rule. It's not like completely game breaking, even though that's not true in my own opinion. There's just so much more I need to talk about, like the Hive Instinct with Hunter's Drive. You basically got like 4d6 charging and discard the 2 lowest result basically. You also got this thing called Savage Distraction. Okay, use the stratagem in the fight phase. When an enemy unit is destroyed as a result of attack made by a model in the Hive Fleet unit from your army, in your opponent's next shooting phase, when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by an enemy model within 6 inches of that Hive Fleet unit against any other unit from your army, subtract 1 from the hit roll. This is why I believe that Kraken is still going to stand strong, even though that majority of our shooting unit just got buffed in terms of point cost. I want to steer you guys towards in the right direction. You should stick to Kraken. You really should stick to Kraken and then really play around with this stratagem. Okay, so what this stratagem actually do? It's like, remember like the old strategy that we use, that we basically send like a single group of Gene Stealer toward the front line with like Swarmlord. You know, Swarmlord kick the Gene Stealer and then like just boost them up to the field. I mean, you can still use that. I think that strategy just become a lot more viable than before. I mean, yes, we did got nerfed halfway through last year because I think it's this year actually. There was FAQ talk about that you can no longer use the opportunistic advanced stratagem during the shooting phase because it's not technically the movement phase, so you can't do that anymore. But that still doesn't matter because we can still move quite a bit of distance as Gene Stealers, because you know you can still move in advance, and you know your Kraken, you roll 3d6 with the highest result, and then you double your advance roll, and then Swarmlord gets you to move again and advance again, and then you can still charge. you can still reach the enemy line pretty reliably. You can still do that, but usually after you initiate the first assault, after you kill like maybe a single unit with your Gene Stealer kind of just like turn to ash, you know, like they just got like counterfire so hard, like they basically just get completely wiped out. You know, they just get completely wiped out. There's nothing they can do about it. They can kind of like pick up some stragglers here and there, but like their use has been depleted. You know, they no longer serve a service for your army because their point is shock assault. They want to shock assault your opponent and make sure your opponent shoot at your Gene Stealer and not the rest of your army. But here is the kicker. If you use Savage Distraction, say if your Gene Stealer destroy an enemy unit, and then you do the consolidation, you do the pow in, and then you try to cover your field as much as possible, make sure all your Gene Stealers model are trying to reach out as far as they can. Everything within 6 inches of that Gene Stealer unit are going to have a -1 to hit with their ranged weapon if they are trying to shoot at anything that's not that Gene Stealer squad. Your opponent cannot prioritize their fire properly, okay? Let's say if we don't have this stratagem, what your opponent's gonna do is, okay, I'm gonna shoot normally, I'm gonna shoot at your Carnifex, I'm gonna shoot at your Hive Tyrants, I'm gonna shoot at your heavy monster unit because, you know, I'm not going to use my last cannon to shoot at your Gene Stealers anyway, right? But if I have this stratagem cast on that group of Gene Stealers, now they are forced to wipe out my Gene Stealers before they can properly shoot with their heavy weapons. So they have to wipe out my Gene Stealers first before they can move on and shoot the rest of my army. This is going to be very important when fighting against a shooting-based army such as Tau and Imperial Guard, because now they are forced to deal with your Gene Stealer. They can't simply just like, okay, I'm just going to retreat and then, you know, I can deal with you later. No, you cannot. You have to deal with me right now. But usually people want to go around and just like, I kind of just like, you know, put my fucking bubble wrapping unit around and just like kind of keep you at bay and then just leave you be, and then I'll just shoot at the rest of your army. But with this stratagem, they can no longer do that. They can no longer pick that as a viable option. They have to wipe out your Gene Stealers. And if you have Catalyst cast on that group of Gene Stealers, oh boy, they're gonna spend so much time trying to remove your Gene Stealer that they're not gonna have effective firepower to shoot against the rest of your army. Alright? So that's just some basics thing I want to talk about. Obviously, there's a lot more stuff, such as like preventing your opponent from retreating with grasping tendrils such as a Toxin Crane, or the ability to actually move and advance and shoot with your Exocrane with the Symbiotic Devastation, or the Lictor Surprise Ambush that deny Overwatch. There's just so much to talk about. But in this video, I just want to give you guys like a very short version of my first impression about the Blood of Bao. And once again, I want to say we are in a very decent position against the Space Marine meta. We're nowhere near weak. We're not exactly. Don't feel underwhelmed. You know, just guys, don't get discouraged just because like some asshole like me just started saying, oh, it's gonna be Tyranids are fucking weak now, we didn't get buff enough, which is completely not true. You know, I kind of just have to want to like slap my face a little bit. It's just, that's completely not true. You know, Tyranids are in much better position than before, in my opinion. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, thank you guys for watching, for listening to me blabbling a bunch of bullshit. I know this video is like so fucking messy and sort of like in terms of like format and stuff, and I was just kind of like ongoing rant after rant after rant, and I feel like kind of repeat myself multiple times. But yeah, that's just my first impression, and let me know what you guys think about the new Tyranid Blood of Bao, and let me know if you guys figure out any new strategies that you guys want me to explore. And as always, if you have any sort of question, please leave it down in the comment section below, like the video, blah blah blah, all this kind of YouTube bullshit. So that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching. I'm so grateful that you guys are still watching my video, even though I haven't been making them for a very longest time. But that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching. This is Sabugi signing out. See you guys later. Goodbye.